from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Tuesday night edition of the program. The phone number, if you want to join us on our late-night national town hall conversation, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And a few things that are going on. President Trump was scheduled to be sentenced this week by Judge Juan Merchan in his case in New York City. That has been delayed until September. Makes sense, right? If you want it to hit the airwaves and hit the news cycle, you want to do it first week of July, or do you want to do it in September, right before, a month or two before Election Day? So, yeah, it sounds like that'll be an October surprise. Not so much of a surprise, but that's what's going on there. Let's see. There's another one. There was another story. Oh, my goodness, the audio clips. There's so many good audio clips. There's a couple of headlines I want to share with you. Biden, he blamed international travel for his poor debate performance. I'll get into that in a little bit. But the Democrats are not happy, and they're showing that they're not happy with their commentary. I'm going to play some of that for you in a moment. Biden has announced another $2.3 billion in military aid for Ukraine. What a surprise. And one of the big critics of Ukraine spending, and somebody I enjoyed having conversations with on this program, Congressman Bob Good from Virginia, lost his primary by less than 400 votes to a opponent that was backed by Trump. And he was a big supporter of Trump's. He was, I know he was against McCarthy, but as far as I had spoken with him, I'd never heard him say anything bad about President Trump. But that's how that went down. And I want to jump into this stuff. And there's a bunch of other stuff, but I'll get into it in a little bit because I really want to dig into this audio. The folks since yesterday, they're still reeling. And when I say the folks, I mean the Democrats, the left within the media. They are reeling over Biden's poor performance and, of course, poor numbers. Now, I was wrong on this totally, right? I really thought, I knew Trump was going to dominate in this debate and he was going to win and get a bump and earn some good fundraising out of it. But I thought that Biden would also get a little bump and, land a glove or two in this melee. Boy, was I wrong. He didn't land anything. He's doing horribly. It gets worse and worse. This is the CNN data analyst, Harry Enton. He was on CNN yesterday saying he's never seen numbers this bad for an incumbent president. Listen to this.
CBS News YouGov conducted some polling post-debate. We can compare it to the pre-debate numbers. And the bottom line, Al, it's not any good. It's not any good. Look at this. Voters who say that Biden has the mental health to be president, it was just 35% pre-debate. Look where it's dropped to now post-debate, 27%. How about that he should be running for president? It was 37% pre-debate. It's now 28%. I have never seen numbers this bad for an incumbent president during my lifetime. I mean, that mental health to be president, just 27%. You might say, okay, that's low, but a lot of people thought Biden was too old back in 2020. These numbers look nothing like this back in 2020. These numbers were bad already, and the truth is, Allison, they have gotten just considerably worse, even in just a few days after that first presidential debate.
Again, that's Harry Enton saying he's never seen anything so bad. Now, he seems very enthusiastic about this, and he's enthusiastic about the data. That's his whole job. But I think it's interesting, right? And who knows? Maybe they brought in Harry Enton to do all this data analysis because John King, who used to do the board and all that, remember when he was doing all that? Maybe he's doing other things at CNN, or maybe he didn't want to trash Biden the way that Harry Enton is willing to trash Biden. And maybe they're trying to make that move towards the middle. Why? Because their ratings are never that great. They don't sell as many ads as the competition, and they want to survive. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know the numbers that he's talking about are legitimate. and Biden does have a problem on his hands. But he didn't stop there. He went on. He's talking with Allison Camerata, and he says that any Democrat who enters the race at this point would be an underdog to Trump. And I think that's right because, quite frankly, Joe Biden, it looks like to be the incumbent president, seems to be an underdog to Trump. Let that sink in. Check this out.
Harry, do we have polling yet that suggests that voters want a different candidate?
Yeah, this is the whole question, right? If it's not President Biden, then who could it be on the Democratic side? And the truth is, there are no easy answers. You know, I went back and looked at the polling versus Donald Trump for a bunch of different Democrats have been suggested. Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. Look at this. They all trail Donald Trump. So the idea here that we're somehow going to get this magic bullet, that there's somehow going to be some Democrat who can beat Donald Trump easily, I just don't see it in the numbers. At this particular point, if Joe Biden takes on Donald Trump, he's trailing. If there's another Democrat who runs against Donald Trump, they too are trailing. Perhaps you want to make the argument you bring in another Democrat who isn't as well known as Joe Biden, who has universal name recognition, and maybe they could change the numbers. But the fact is, any Democrat who entered the race right now, at least among those that are being suggested by a bunch of folks, they would all enter the race at this particular point as an underdog to former President Donald Trump.
But, Harry, are those numbers old numbers or are those since the debate? I mean, maybe the conversation has changed.
Yeah, those are not numbers that have been taken since the debate, though I was looking at numbers that were post-debate. This takes into account an average, a long-term average, right? Because the key is I don't just want to rely upon one polling number. But even the limited polling data that we have post-debate suggests that none of those candidates on your screen, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, or Kamala Harris, any of those would be favored over Donald Trump. He leads against all of them, whether you look at the pre-debate numbers or the post-debate numbers. And, of course, I like to look at an aggregate of numbers, so that's what I did. But the fact is, even if you just did post-debate, it really wouldn't look any different.
Woo! Now, who's missing from the equation there? And thank you for that, Harry Enton, for, focusing on the numbers and keeping it real. The question here, I think, becomes everybody wants, I would say most conservatives that I know are dying for Michelle Obama to run. And they have a funny nickname for her. They call her Big Mike. I really don't know why, because her name's Michelle. But the reality here is I really don't believe Michelle Obama runs. Now, if CNN is setting the stage saying every Democrat that runs, none of them can succeed, then what do? Then maybe they try to create a draft Michelle Obama type of thing. The problem is she said she's not doing it. I don't see a situation where it makes sense for them to do it. And I honestly don't know that she wins against Trump. But I would love to have seen Harry Enton from CNN, the data analyst, use Michelle Obama to see if her name recognition is something that would help in this race. I can't think of any time in history, because it doesn't exist, where a sitting president, an incumbent, would not run, get removed by his own party because he's a bad candidate, throw in the former first lady, and think that they're going to sail into a victory. I just don't see how that works. I think the American people would be like, some of them might be like, all right, thanks, hardcore party Democrats. But everybody else, I think they're going to, what is wrong with you people? Like, are you that desperate? Are you that bad at your job that you're going to start throwing everything up to see what sticks? This is a non-starter, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but literally, we're in July. We've got 4 months. Who runs a presidential campaign in 4 months? You tell me. Anyway, I got more on numbers and polls and all of that, and we're going to talk about the debate and more when we come back. Also going to get into some of the Supreme Court analysis because there's plenty on that as well. So keep it locked right here. We're going to get into a lot of stuff tonight, including how the FDA, Biden's FDA, is dropping the ball on vaping and e-cigarettes, as well as some conversation on the Second Amendment. There was some stuff on the Second Amendment that came out. Did you know the Surgeon General about a week ago said we should put a warning label on guns, the way they did with cigarettes? I mean, things, in my opinion, are just going off the deep end. So we're going to have lots of conversations tonight. A phone number, if you want to join us, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And what does this mean practically? I think it means if you're Joe Biden, if you're a Democrat who's running for the president, your path right now is clear. You have to run against the Supreme Court. You have to run against this decision. This is not America. If you want to make America great again, you got to return to the rule of law. This decision today, unfortunately, is a blueprint on how to end the rule of law.
That is Neil Katyal. He is a legal analyst on MSNBC now, but before that, he was the principal deputy solicitor general of the United States and served as acting solicitor general for a while in the Obama administration. And he's constantly on television making arguments, legal arguments, that people take very seriously because Neil Katyal was, the highest ranking official, under the AG for the United States, arguing in front of the Supreme Court. And I tend to disagree with him most of the time, and I can't really speak to his record of wins and losses, but I do know philosophically, I think he's pretty off. But I want to bring in my own big guns. Former Attorney General for the state of Arizona, Mark Brnovich. Welcome back, sir.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
I do now. Okay, great.
Oh, sorry about that. Ever since I sued Google when I was AG, my phone never works correctly, so I apologize for that.
It's all good, General.
Blame
anyway,
big tech.
Yeah, welcome back. I want to get your take on a number of things. The Supreme Court's been busy the last few days, and there's a lot to discuss. But Neil Katyal, he says that the immunity ruling that came out yesterday is a blueprint for how to end the rule of law. What do you think about that?
Well, I think he's absolutely incorrect. I mean, the Constitution sets forth the powers of the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. And what the Supreme Court did was basically said, look, if a president, this isn't about Donald Trump, but any president that was acting within the scope of their authority under their powers in the U.S. Constitution is immune from criminal prosecution. And just as a common sense holding or ruling, like think about this. We don't want presidents being prosecuted for example, doing a strike on Al-Qaeda. We don't want presidents being prosecuted for prosecuting protesters that are shooting up federal courthouses, as the left's done. And so it really is a common sense ruling. And what's happened is the left is, because they hate Donald Trump so much and they see it through that prism, they need to take a step back and say to themselves, wait a minute, this was a legally correct decision. And not only that, I mean, my goodness, people like Joe Biden secretly have to be praising this decision because, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, more than 100,000 people died last year of fentanyl overdoses. The cartels have seized control of our southern border. And so Biden has to be saying to himself, thank goodness this decision came out because he won't be prosecuted by the next administration or by some other rogue AG for the deaths of so many Americans under his watch.
Now, General Brnovich, this is, I agree with you on this. And I think that the court got it right, thankfully, because they've been punting a little bit lately. But Biden comes out a little bit later in the day and kind of seems to say the American people need to know what the outcome of these cases. Obviously, the scope of this is somewhat limited, and they said, look, presidents have immunity, all presidents. Now, go back and figure it out. How do you think this plays out when it comes to figuring it out in these other lower courts?
Look, I think the Democrats and Joe Biden are, by definition, alienated by every Supreme Court decision because they don't believe in the Constitution. They think that every decision should be based on the ends justifying the means, which is totally the antithesis to the rule of law. So, as I said, anyone that should be relieved by the decision is Joe Biden because his whole term in office can be labeled as high crimes and misdemeanors, quite frankly. And so I think the left is wringing their hands because they have DJT derangement syndrome. They can't stand Donald Trump. And so any decision that may benefit him, even though it's constitutionally correct, they are going to attack, which is really, really unfortunate. And it breaks my heart. I'm a law and order, conservative, that people should not be attacking the court when they disagree with their decisions. And the reason why Supreme Court justices are given life tenure is because they're not involved in politics. They make decisions based on the Constitution. And clearly, this decision was tethered in the Constitution and allowing the President of the United States to, whether a Democrat or Republican, to execute their authority under Article 2 of the United States Constitution. And what really I think is heartbreaking is even Justice Sotomayor, reading her dissent, I mean, she's throwing logs in the fire. These are left-wing talking points about, Donald Trump and MAGA, whatever, being a threat to democracy. And then the reality is that if this decision is tethered, it's based in the Constitution. And my goodness, if you don't like Donald Trump, what you don't do is prosecute him or the ends justify the means. What you do is try to beat him in an election. And the left is worried that they can't beat him in an election, so they're using every means necessary to try to take him out.
Folks, we're on with former Attorney General for the state of Arizona, Mark Brnovich. And I think you're right on this one, and it seems to be very partisan. My thinking is that they're going to try and squeeze out as much lawfare as they can. When it comes to doing that, I think it backfires, politically speaking. I think it backfires, and it kind of helps Trump politically, and I think we're seeing that.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's backfired. You see the result of the bogus New York prosecution. As a result of that, you see former President Trump's poll numbers increasing, because I think fundamentally most Americans, if they're not hardcore activists on the right or left, we're all about fairness. We're all about, no matter who you are, where you come from, everyone gets a fair shake under the law. And what happened to President Trump in New York was you had a rogue left-wing prosecutor that was going after him for something that wasn't even a crime, that's going to be overturned on appeal. And I think fundamentally people see that and they're like, this is wrong. If you don't agree with the president, the way you settle your differences is through the electoral process. The problem the Democrats have, Rich, is that, Joe Biden is, he can't win. I mean, and we saw this in the debate the other night, is that I think most hardworking Americans understand that he is not in touch. He's not in control. He's obviously mentally challenged on a lot of things. And so the left is going to do everything they can to try to stop Republicans and Donald Trump from winning elections. And so that's what a lot of these prosecutors are about. I think it's fundamentally unfair. And, historically, even groups like the ACLU, they used to fight and they used to say, oh, my gosh, if 100 guilty people are let free, it's okay because we never want one innocent person to be convicted. But now, because they're neo-Marxists, the ends justifies the means, and they're willing to do everything they can to try to stop Donald Trump because they believe that he is some great evil.
Yep. I'm with you there. And I want to follow up on the stuff you were talking about Trump, because he's got that case in New York that was just delayed. So we'll get to that straight ahead. Folks, we're coming right back with Attorney General Mark Brnovich from the state of Arizona. Don't move a muscle. I'm Rich Valdez.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A New York judge is delaying former President Trump's hush money sentencing.
That decision comes after the Supreme Court ruled on Monday that former presidents have broad immunity from prosecution. Filing a letter on Tuesday, DA Alvin Bragg's office wrote that they are not against Mr. Trump's request to delay the sentence hearing that is scheduled for July 11th, but it could delay a different case from Bragg's office, who charged Trump with 34 felony counts in New York. Trump was found guilty of those charges in May, but his legal team is now trying to toss the conviction out in light of the Supreme Court ruling. Prosecutors don't believe that Trump's lawyers have any, quote, merit to request one. The earliest Trump could be sentenced is September 18th.
So there we have it. That's the report from Fox in Phoenix that Judge Merchan has delayed Trump's sentencing in the Manhattan NDA case. And this is interesting because none of us know. I mean, maybe our guest, former Arizona State Attorney General Mark Brnovich, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you think this one plays out.
Well, I think clearly the case will be overturned on appeal. I mean, from the very beginning, you have a judge that's got some potential conflicts that should have recused himself, and then he made decisions from the very, very beginning where, for example, he said that the former president had to appear every day in court for every hearing. I've never heard of that. I've handled thousands of criminal cases in my career. I mean, Rich, before I became Attorney General, I was a federal prosecutor, a state gang prosecutor, and I've never heard of this notion that a judge requiring someone accused or a defendant to stay in court for every single moment of the trial. And so you had that at the beginning, and then you bookend that with at the very end the jury instructions, which weren't even provided to the defense counsel. And then you have all sorts of legal issues regarding the testimony of, Stormy Daniels. I mean, clearly that had nothing to do. And there's there's state rules that prohibit introducing evidence that's clearly inflammatory and prejudicial to the defendant. So there are all sorts of issues on appeal. So I think from the very beginning, you had a Manhattan DA, and of course you have a New York Attorney General.
Right.
They clearly have a political, they have a political vendetta, and they're going to do everything they can to get the former president. And unfortunately, I think the judge went along with it. And so that's why you ended up with the result you did, but it will be overturned on appeal. And of course, now there's the issue of, based on the U.S. Supreme Court ruling this week on presidential immunity, will that impact the evidence or whatever the testimony that was introduced to the trial? So there are all sorts of legal issues. But I think the real question is that, while we wait for the Court of Appeals to overturn the conviction, what's going to happen with former President Trump as he campaigns for president? Because I think the left is doing everything they can to stop him from winning, and they try to set this narrative that somehow he's a danger to democracy.
Yeah, and this one, I mean, they're all hands on deck with that one. But I'm wondering how this ends up, because if they have to use these this process, right? My supposition is that the appeals court should be just as, I'm going to use the word couth, as this court should have been, but it wasn't, because you had these judges that were, I'm going to say, activist in nature. So should they get activist judges on appeal, do you think that we get actual justice here, or do they have to rely on moving this back to the federal court somehow to, enforce what was in the Supreme Court decision from yesterday?
Look, I learned a long time ago not to try to predict what any judge is going to do. So I'm not going to sit there and say, they're going to do this or they're going to do that. What I do know, that as a former prosecutor, there are so many issues on appeal where an appellate court will have to overturn this case. But we live in this weird time right now with anything dealing with Donald Trump. The left feels like the ends justifies the means. Remember, even the moderators the other night, Jake Tapper, all these people, I mean, they think Donald Trump is the, second coming of a fascist. And they're saying all these things. So in the left's mind, you have a lot of people that think that they need to do everything they can to stop Donald Trump. So if you look at it through that prism, I mean, I think that there's going to be judges, especially in New York, that aren't going to do the right thing. But, the irony is that as we saw even a few years ago, when the left was bending backwards for all these people that are breaking the law, whether they were, homeless encampments, whether they were all these people that were, tearing down police stations and courthouses, they defended them because they thought the ends justified the means. And the criminal justice system is all about protecting individual rights. And that's why, shame on groups like the ACLU, shame on all these left-wing groups that used to, stand up, and they used to defend all sorts of like terrible people like the Ku Klux Klan. And now none of those groups are anywhere to be heard. But the justice system is all about protecting individuals against the government. And, at the end of the day, there's a thing I learned a long time ago as a young prosecutor. We used to call it the rule of lenity. And what that meant is that criminal statutes should be construed narrowly and in favor of the individual. When you're a prosecutor, you don't throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. If there's any doubt, you don't bring a case. But what we've seen from these left-wing prosecutors is because they're so political, they're willing to throw away those traditional rules and do everything they can because they think they're on some, higher, cause when it comes to the former president. So it's actually mind-boggling to me that more civil libertarians or more principled people on the left or more defense attorneys aren't out there saying, my goodness, this is wrong. The ends do not justify the means.
Folks, we're on with former Arizona State Attorney General Mark Brnovich. And, General, my question here is, I was reading an article that had a quote from Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project. And he pointed out that a jury doesn't, they find guilt, but that in and of itself is not a conviction. It's a conviction that comes once the sentence happens from the judge. So this term that they're using of convicted felon is presumptuous. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I don't want to get in the weeds on that. What I would say is that any self-respecting criminal defense attorney, any self-respecting prosecutor, any self-respecting judge would tell you that there were so many errors that there's no way this conviction will be upheld on appeal. And that's the bottom line, is that you have a rogue prosecutor doing something that's inconsistent with their prosecutor ethics. Let me just tell you a really quick story. I remember when I was a young prosecutor, I was prosecuting a gang member, and there was an issue because he had these tattoos, including teardrops on his face. And the defense attorney had brought this up. And I remember thinking, oh, this is great. The defense attorney is bringing this up. And a more senior prosecutor, one of my mentors, had pulled me aside and said, look, when you're a prosecutor, you got to remember your conviction has to be upheld on appeal. So you don't want information coming in that will be overturned on appeal. And so, I always made sure I never had a case overturned on appeal. And so I made sure I did the right thing in the right way. But I just feel like Alvin Bragg, doesn't care. He's going to do everything he can to convict Trump. And there's so many errors, it's going to be overturned on appeal. And so, whether people say it's a conviction or not a conviction, it's sad, but the left has gotten what they wanted. And at the end of the day, whether it takes months or years, the conviction is going to be overturned on appeal.
Yeah, good point. Folks, we're coming right back with former Arizona State Attorney General Mark Brnovich.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with former Arizona State Attorney General Mark Brnovich. And Mark Brnovich, you were really taking the bull by the horns when you were AG. You had all these cases that were up because you were really defending your state on issues of the border, issues of big tech, very, very hands-on. And I think that's a great thing. I think we need more of that. But we have the other side, right? You've got the side that doesn't care about the Constitution, doesn't care about the rule of law, that is constantly trying to, whether it's put Trump in jail or limit our speech or whatever, what have you, they're constantly at us. And we saw a couple of wins recently, one of them being the win. I'm going to take it as a win where the Supreme Court said, look, this insurrection case against Trump isn't going to be all it was, right? There was, what happened like a week ago or 10 days ago, and now we have the more recent stuff. What do you think ultimately ends up happening with these Jack Smith cases?
I'm not sure ultimately what happens, but I think that he's got to be genuinely worried because, for example, the decision today about presidential immunity has essentially gutted his case. If any normal prosecutor would be like, oh, my goodness, it relies on things that are covered by presidential immunity and the recent SCOTUS decision, and they would just dismiss that case. And so I think that so many of these prosecutions are politically motivated. Right. And what we've seen, unfortunately, with Jack Smith is that even in the case that was dismissed related to the January 6th defendants, is they try to find criminal laws, and they're trying to find a square peg into a round hole. And this is what I was saying earlier about the rule of lenity. Prosecutors are not supposed to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. What prosecutors are supposed to do is you construe a criminal statute narrowly. You don't try out some sort of novel, untested theory, that you dreamed up in some, think tank. And so I think that what we've seen from the Supreme Court, even related to Chevron deference, we've seen that case this week, the whole thing with presidential immunity, what the Supreme Court has consistently done, there's a theme here. It's not right or left. The theme has been that there's a healthy distrust of centralized government and there's a healthy distrust of centralized authority. And if you're a conservative, you should welcome this. If you're a libertarian, you should welcome it because at the end of the day, any government that's big enough to give you everything is big enough to take it away. And we shouldn't rely on individuals coming up with novel theories to prosecute their political opponents.
Makes sense. Now, I want to ask you, you did such a great job as AG. What's the next step? What can we look forward to coming down the pipe for Mark Brnovich?
I don't know. I do know this is that I'm a big music guy, Rich, and I used to love being on your show when I was AG. And as you mentioned before, whether it was, our office suing against the unconstitutional COVID vaccine mandates, whether it was Brnovich v. DNC, where I personally argued at the U.S. Supreme Court to allow states to pass common sense election integrity measures. The list goes on and on. Look, I'm a policy wonk. I'm in the private sector now, but what I do know that every band, I'm a music guy, every band has an encore. And, the Stones, I just saw the Rolling Stones recently. Nice. They always do one song as an encore.
And they're remarkable because of their age.
Grateful Dead sometimes plays for 20 minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes. And so I'm not sure what the encore is. There's a very nasty tone in politics right now, but at the end of the day, these debates, what is going on, are so meaningful, that I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can to make sure this is a great country, not only for myself, but my children and their children. And, Rich, I'm a first-generation American, and so I've always said that the promise of America, we don't have a common ethnic identity, we don't have a common religion, but we have the rule of law. And the Biden administration has shredded that over the last 4 years. And so I'm always about what can I do to promote and protect the rule of law.
Amen to that, brother. Well, you're always welcome here. I love the conversation. And let everybody that's listening know how they can find you, whether it's a website or a social media account, so they can keep up to speed with you.
Well, I'm at generalbrnovich.com. And, my friends call me the Burno, but it's at generalbrnovich.com. That's my X handle, or I guess in the old days you call it your Twitter handle.
Outstanding. Well, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for staying up late with us and look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Always great, Rich. Thank you so much.
God
bless you, brother.
Folks, Attorney General Mark Brnovich, a real class act. We're coming right back with your calls, your thoughts, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Carl, according to the people you've been talking to, what are you hearing?
Well, these are people, several of them, who are very close to President Biden, who love him, have supported him, have been among them are some people who have raised a lot of money for him. And they are adamant that what we saw the other night, the Joe Biden we saw, is not a one-off, that there have been 15, 20 occasions in the last year and a half when the president has appeared somewhat as he did in that horror show that we witnessed. And what's so significant is the people that this is coming from, and also how many people around the president are aware of such incidents, including some reporters, incidentally, who have witnessed some of them. But here we see tonight, as these people say, President Biden at his absolute best, and yet these people who have supported him, loved him, campaigned for him, see him often, say that in the last 6 months particularly, there has been a marked incidence of cognitive decline and physical.
That is Carl Bernstein of the legendary, I should say infamous, Woodward and Bernstein. And he was on CNN with Anderson Cooper discussing that. And he didn't stop there. I mean, he continued saying that, we're dealing with two sets of the same person. Listen to this.
There is no question. I have heard for 2 years how sharp Joe Biden is in his national security meetings. He has special briefing books on Ukraine, on the situation in Gaza that go down into very detailed military reports.
Oh, come on, Bernstein. There's no way you believe any of that. There's no way Bernstein believes any of this, that this man is sharp behind closed doors and nobody's looking. Joe El Baboso Biden is the biggest policy wonk in town, especially on foreign policy. Come on. That's never been the case with Joe Biden, and it's never going to be the case. What is the case with Joe Biden is that he has become worse than he was. And that was a pretty bad place to begin with. So I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, KDKA. Check in with Bill. Go ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hi, Rich. Hey, believe me, I'm a Trump supporter. I have been, forever. I had to listen to a dude on KDK today. He's a nice guy, but, he had these people calling. It's very liberal.
Radio, do you think that we can trust the Democrats, Bill?
No, sir. No way at all. They're already planning how they're going to overthrow this election. Believe me, it's already in a planning stage. I was going to tell them, you know what, dude, Democrat, you are the party of 5 Ds: death, destruction, demolition. You're Democrats.
And they're dummies. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. Folks, we're going to come back to more conversation, your calls, and more. We're going to talk about some vaping. We're going to talk about this Supreme Court case on the Second Amendment and more. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez, and hour number 2 is coming up right now.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. If you want to join our late night national town hall conversation, give us a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And a bunch going on, like usual. There's always something happening during the day, some stuff happening at night. And in addition to all the SCOTUS news, the Supreme Court of the United States, there was, of course, the Trump immunity case that we continue to talk about, Judge Merchan delaying Trump's sentencing, and Biden agreeing to give more money to Ukraine. There's also some other news on the Second Amendment. One is a little bit newer than the other. I want to start with the story from a few days ago because I thought this was incredibly remarkable, that the Surgeon General of the United States, he's the guy that basically says, look, smoking's not good for you. We'll put a warning label on every box of cigarettes. We're going to make sure everybody knows what's going on. That's his job, right? He's the doctor. But what does he have to do with guns? Well, he's deciding to put a warning label on guns. Listen to this.
Surgeon General releasing a warning about gun violence, calling it an urgent public health crisis. Gun violence is the leading cause of death among children in the U.S., and because of this, the Surgeon General says the government needs to shift to a public health approach like they've done with cigarettes and car crashes. This would include adding warning labels on guns, reinstating the ban on assault weapons, and new laws on safe gun storage. This comes as the White House announced more than 500 people are facing federal charges under President Biden's gun safety legislation. That bill was signed in 2022 and targets cartels and organized crime rings. The act also includes safety measures like enhanced background checks, which a new report just revealed stopped about 800 sales of firearms to people under the age of 21.
So that, again, is Fox 13 reporting there. And I want to break this down to the crux of it, right? Because ultimately, I think this is yet another attack on the Second Amendment. And to get some reaction and analysis on this, I want to go to AWR Hawkins. He is the Second Amendment correspondent for Breitbart News, and we've had him on before. He's absolutely terrific. Dr. Hawkins, welcome back, sir.
Hi, Rich. Great to be with you.
You bet. So what's the story here with this Attorney General of the United States? I mean, the Surgeon General of the United States.
It's just another ideologue. I mean, you know, the whole... There, excuse me, allergies are getting me. There are numerous ways to think about this. And I've actually told people there's something encouraging about it, and it's this. For years, Democrats have told us, you know, Republicans have stood in the way, the American people want gun control, but that's not true. That's why no Congress, Democrat or Republican, after Sandy Hook, Democrats controlled everything. They didn't pass gun control. And so, they had Obama in office, and they couldn't get it done. So it's a very unpopular thing. So they shifted from Congress to the ATF. We'll let the ATF do regulatory gun control. Well, that hasn't worked out well. So now we'll let the Surgeon General do it. He'll call this a public health crisis, and under the blanket of that, he can use quote-unquote science to go after things. And that's exactly what they're going to try to do. Rich, this is not going to work. It's going to be a bureaucracy at its worst, and that's almost any bureaucracy is something at its worst. That's all we're going to get out of this, more bureaucracy. But, you know, Supreme Court's ruling overturning Chevron is going to make it hard even for the Surgeon General to do what he wants to do. It's really hurting ATF, but it's going to hurt him too. So this is quickly becoming a joke.
You know, I find it interesting, and I think you're right here. Just like they did with COVID, just like they've done with everything, they will try and use the science, quote unquote, to go after just about anything they don't believe in. And in my opinion, this is just another very thinly veiled attempt to stifle one's constitutional right, and this time to cast aspersions on it. Do you think that this ultimately has any legs and it goes anywhere? Or is this just more of a gimmick?
Oh, I think it's at the wrong time. I mean, I think if you'll remember, I hate to keep going back to something else, Rich, but I love an example from history. If you go back to Sandy Hook, everybody thought the Democrats were going to get anything they wanted. And then they jumped the shark and they failed. They went for too much and they ruined their chances. And I think they've done the same thing here. Plus, we have a more educated public than we used to. Our public owns far more guns, Rich. We're up to roughly 470 million privately owned guns in this country. 470 million. Not everyone who owns one is a Republican. Not everyone who owns one is an independent. There are some Democrats that own them. And so I think what we have people who are thinking different ways for the first time. So the Surgeon General waited, in my opinion, about 5 years too late to try to sell this.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. And if this doesn't go the way they want, what else do you see coming down the pipe? Because I can only imagine that they're going to do more. I remember last year it was the constant beating of the drum where they were saying the number one reason, the number one cause of death for children was guns. And they were coming after guns that way. And again, once you splice the numbers the way they wanted to, that's how it looked. But when people were looking at it, it wasn't actually the case. So I feel like they're going to continue to do that to make guns a public health crisis.
Right. Well, I think they will keep pushing it, Rich. There's no doubt. But, you know, Joe Biden, through those same years you're talking about, he has claimed that a 9mm is a high power caliber. He has claimed that a 9mm bullet blows the lungs out of the body. He has claimed a million different things, and he keeps saying it over and over, but saying it over and over doesn't make it true. Now, he probably does have a small group of people who believe anything he says, but that group is shrinking. So you say what's going to happen. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think what's going to happen is Donald J. Trump. It's exactly what we need. And the reason we need him, it's not for any specific legislation. I'm not even thinking that way. We need him to continue to solidify the judicial system. We're only where we are right now because he saved us with that Supreme Court. Not only that, but with circuit courts. He actually turned the ninth from being, everybody used to talk about the Ninth Circuit as being the Ninth Circus. And that's began to slowly diminish. That language has, because Trump turned that around. And we need 4 more years of putting in justices from someone who's not ashamed to pick conservatives.
I hear that. Folks, we're on with Dr. AWR Hawkins. He is the Second Amendment correspondent at Breitbart News. Check him out at Breitbart.com. We're coming right back. We're going to continue this discussion on the Supreme Court, how they've punted on this legislation that we heard about the other day, what that means, and what we can expect coming from the court. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
It's a major decision, 8-1, 8 of the justices on board with a decision that limits the reach of the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right to bear arms. This is a Supreme Court that has been extremely friendly to gun rights claims. This case is different. This is a case involving a man who was under a restraining order for domestic violence. He had a weapon and had threatened his intimate partner with it. He'd threatened other people with it. He's discharged it in public. He was a danger, the court decided, and so disarmed him. He brought a suit saying that the reason he should not be disarmed is because the original meaning of the Second Amendment, back when it was passed in the 1700s, did not include domestic violence as a reason for disarming people. In this case, in an opinion written by Chief Justice John Roberts, the court rejects that argument. Roberts declaring that taken together, if you look at all of the evidence, he says, of the history of gun restrictions in this country, common sense suggests the same thing. When an individual poses a clear threat of physical violence to another, the threatening individual may be disarmed.
All right, that's a report, and this is the current state of affairs of what's going on here. They've tried this with red flag laws. They're trying it a different way now. Our guest, AWR Hawkins from Breitbart. AWR, what is going on here, and help us understand.
Well, I mean, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, I think there's a concern that this means people who haven't been convicted could lose gun rights. I've heard that expressed.
Right.
I think there's also been a observation it may be a one-off. So, I mean, I think there are.
I think we're losing you, AWR. I'm sorry, man. We're going to put you on hold, see if we can get a better line for you. Folks, again, AWR Hawkins from Breitbart. But ultimately, what I think is happening here, while we try to get his line sorted out, I believe that this is yet another attempt to backdoor the desire, the will of the left within the government, the left within the media, the left within academia, the left in our country, to backdoor their will, right? Because their will is antithetical to the United States Constitution, which says we get to have guns. It's as simple as day. They will try and contort the Constitution. They'll try and do everything they can in order to change that so that we start to believe their rhetoric, but ultimately it's not true. And something AWR said in the last segment is you could say, or Brnovich, I'm confusing the two, but he said you could say something over and over and over again. It doesn't make it true. AWR Hawkins, what's your take on how this continues to play out?
Well, now, Rich, I think this is the most important part. This is a great question from you. And this is solely my opinion, but I've spent a long time writing on this. I believe that, we have a free court, but I believe there are a couple on the side who aren't as strong as the other four. And I believe there's a here to cover one's butt. I'll put it that way, because as Clarence Thomas made clear this morning, if they can get a assault weapons ban in front of them, they're going to strike it down. Clarence Thomas said the Second Amendment and the firearms that are in common use, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said they cannot be relegated to a second-class status. And he cannot wait. He cannot wait till the Seventh Circuit finishes its course on the Illinois assault ban. He cannot wait to then take that and review it. And so I believe people were shocked by the bump stock. People were shocked by Chevron being overturned. If you think that shocked you, just hold on to your horses. Because when they get their hands on the assault weapons ban, you're going to hear from Clarence Thomas, the Second Amendment covers your AR-15.
Woo! So, I mean, that's good news to me. I think the more of these precedents that we can get and try to put this stuff to bed, the better, especially when they're coming out of the Supreme Court of the United States. And I think that they're clever in their approach, because they use things like, again, with red flag laws, they had multiple examples. But in this situation about domestic violence, people, you hear domestic violence and people think, oh, this guy's a wife beater. Nobody wants to help out a guy that's hurting a woman. So they try to use that to, I think, sully or sway the situation. And ultimately, they're appealing to people's good nature. Same thing they do when they say Trump is a threat to democracy. It's common tactic, and I get it. It's a rhetorical thing. But you have to, I think, at least in my opinion, you tell me what you think, you have to be sober-minded, and you have to say, hold on, we're going to look at the law, right? We're going to look at the rule of law, and we're going to look at what the founders intended, and what are we doing here? And not the emotion of the day. Am I right?
Right. Oh, no, and that's why I love, Clarence Thomas is the Scalia of this moment.
Our day, yeah.
And so I'm very thrilled with that, and I trust him to do everything you just said. I agree. We're not looking at, as the left says, I'm not looking at a document that evolves or a document that is in flux. I'm looking at words, ink on a paper. They are fixed. And what we need the court to do is look at that ink and say, what were the intentions of our founders? What does history support? What do their extra constitutional writings support? What do the Federalist Papers support? Federalist Papers will give you insight. And we do. That's how we have. And I know Joe Biden hates this. But what does natural law teach us? And natural law is important. Everybody knows revelatory law or revelation. They read their Bibles. Nothing wrong with that. I don't mean that to sound derogatory. That law is from God. But guess what? So is natural law. And natural law and revealed law are always in agreement. And that's why Clarence Thomas, even back when he was being confirmed, that's why natural law was so important to him, because if you understand natural law, as John Locke taught in the 1770s, if you understand natural law, then guess what? You understand everything. And that's where we are right now.
Now, the Supreme Court ordered some lower courts to take another look at some of the challenges to federal and state firearms restrictions. What do you think is the end game there with all of these cases? Do you think that they were taking it easy because they wanted to get out of here and wrap up their session? Or do you think they really feel that this is a states' rights issue? Your thoughts?
Well, again, my opinion, Rich. My opinion, by pushing this back, where basically Trump doesn't have any more hearings until after the election. That's what CNN missed all this when they did their reporting. They've given Trump an opportunity to get elected and pardon himself on everything that's pardonable. And by then, the energy will be gone, because the whole hope, you have to remember, the real hope behind the prosecution is not that, we got him, he did something wrong, because he didn't. The real hope is, if we prosecute him, he won't run. Well, if he wins, it takes all the wind out of their sails. It defeats their whole purpose. And so I believe what the Supreme Court did wisely, they called for the review you're talking about on certain aspects, but also by pushing further court hearings and other things back until after the election, they have taken away exactly what the left was trying to do. The left wanted to have a hearing and treat him the same way he was treated in New York, where he had to come in, sit every day. He couldn't be out campaigning, even though he wasn't speaking, he wasn't doing anything. He had to be there. They can't do that now. Election interference is gone in that way. And I believe that was the end game, to be honest.
Well put, AWR Hawkins. Let everybody know how they can find some of your writing and keep up to speed with the work that you're doing.
Well, number one, I only write at Breitbart, Breitbart.com. Number two, you can follow my Instagram, AWR_Hawkins.
Outstanding. Well, AWR Hawkins, you are a gentleman, you are a scholar, and I really appreciate you being here tonight, sir. You're a patriot.
Rich, it's always great to be with you, buddy. I hope you have a great...
You too. Happy 4th of July. God bless. Folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more are coming up. The number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And, of course, if you missed any part of the interviews tonight, check out the website, richvaldez.com. You get it all there. You got all the archived episodes. If you hit play, you could listen to old shows, new shows. You could listen to the live show. We got a live stream on there. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode and get notified when there's new ones, listen whenever you want on demand, you can subscribe to the podcast as well. Go to richvaldez.com. richvaldez.com is the website. Folks, don't go anywhere. We're coming right back to talk about vaping. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Mr. Call Screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
In Gallatin County, 20% of high school students are current e-cigarette users, meaning they used a vape on 2 or more days over the past month, which is double the national average.
We know that they addict children specifically, and that children are the primary users of these.
Sherry Murbach is Gallatin County's tobacco education specialist, and she's talking about Juuls after the FDA rescinded its marketing ban on the controversial device earlier this month.
It doesn't really change anything about what we are considering the safety of these products. It just means that they're going to go through that pre-market approval process again.
To date, 3 manufacturers have received marketing approval since 2021, with just 27 products on the FDA's list of e-cigarettes that are authorized to be sold in the U.S. But if you've been in a convenience store lately, you might have noticed the process isn't keeping all other products off the shelves, with many outlets offering a selection of flavored options, none of which are approved for sale.
That, again, Brianna Carroll, NBC Montana, reporting on vaping, different flavors, this, that, and the third. And the question becomes, does the FDA in our country do its job when it comes to vaping and e-cigarettes? Are they doing anything to address the youth vaping epidemic? And it's an epidemic because of all these different ailments that they claim come from inhaling this vapor, which apparently is mixed with chemicals. And again, I say apparently because I just don't know the real deal on this, because it's relatively new, this phenomena, right? There's a Netflix series on it, and there's a lot of people out there vaping, that's for sure. But I don't think there's a body of longitudinal data to look at least as far as I know. But what would I know, right? That's why we bring in the experts. And of course, we want to talk about China's involvement in this. So for the next 3 segments, that's what we're going to do. But I want to start with the FDA, and whether or not they're doing their job. And to do that, I want to bring in Tony Abboud. He's Executive Director of the Vapor Technology Association. Tony Abboud, welcome.
Hey, Rich, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this important.
Yeah, you bet. Now, Tony Abboud, I want to get your take on the overall state of vaping here. I believe it's your position that the FDA is not doing its job. Why?
There's a long list of reasons, Rich, but the bottom line is the FDA was charged under the Tobacco Control Act that was passed in 2009 to get less harmful nicotine alternatives to smoking cigarettes into the marketplace. And then the FDA decided in 2016 to deem e-cigarettes. They used their power to claim e-cigarettes and other types of products containing nicotine as being regulated products. And then they rolled out this massive regulation, and they were supposed to implement that regulation according to a specific schedule. Well, they have just not done that. They have left us now, as your opening segment noted, with only 27 e-cigarettes that have been authorized for use. And that's, just so your audience knows, that's not really 27 products. That's really about 10 unique devices, and the rest of the products on that list are like accessories or chargers or things like that. So in other words, the population of 30 million smokers in this country and the 15 million vapors, the FDA says you can only use about 10 devices. That's all we're going to allow. In the meantime, what they've been supposed to be doing is getting people off of cigarettes. They have authorized 821 new cigarettes in the last year alone, 2,000 total combustible tobacco products. Why is that important? That's important because it is the smoking of tobacco, it is the smoking of cigarettes that kills Americans. Nearly 500,000 Americans every year die from cigarette smoking, and another 16 million suffer from smoking-related diseases, Rich. And that costs our economy hundreds of billions of dollars in lost GDP and healthcare costs. This FDA is not following the body of science and not listening to the leading tobacco control scientists in this country. They're running a political agenda to keep e-cigarettes out of the market. And in the process, they're strengthening the hand of the cigarette companies and continuing to authorize their cigarettes and keeping Americans smoking rather than on less harmful nicotine alternatives like vaping products.
Folks, we're on with Tony Abboud, calling us from the Vapor Technology Association. And it's interesting. It seems to me, Tony Abboud, that I'm going to say big tobacco, right? The tobacco lobby seems to be more politically powerful than the vaping lobby, and that's why they're getting more done. Or is that too simplistic of a way to put it?
Well, look, either way, the big tobacco lobby wins. If vaping products are off the market, guess what happens? More people buy cigarettes. In fact, here's an interesting scientific study that came out last fall. They looked at every state and local jurisdiction in the country that has restricted or banned the sale of flavored e-cigarettes. And they found that in each one of those jurisdictions, that the restriction or ban on flavored e-cigarettes alone directly led to an increase in cigarette smoking. Another study was just put out by the National Bureau for Economic Research. They found they made similar findings, but also noted that increased teen smoking. This is sending us in the wrong direction. All of these anti-vaping efforts, whether they come from the tobacco industry or whether they come from anti-vaping groups or whether they come from politicians who would love people to smoke and vape cannabis but just cannot fathom the possibility that they would be vaping nicotine, this is taking us down the wrong path. And this is why the FDA is simply failing at its job. And if they don't reverse course fast, more and more Americans will die.
Folks, we're on with Tony Abboud from the Vapor Technology Association. And interesting stuff. I wasn't aware of a lot of this. So I'm going to continue this discussion. I want to get your take on vaping amongst youth, if it's an epidemic or not. I know there's been some films about this on Netflix and other streaming networks that were very persuasive in showing how highly addictive vaping is and how it's so dangerous for so many people. So I want to get your take on that right after this. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation with Tony Abboud from the Vaping Technology Association. And Tony Abboud, I want to get your take on the youth vaping situation. Some say it's an epidemic, others don't. What does that look like? Is there a trend that's going up, or are things getting better since the Juul pod crisis?
Well, you perfectly framed the question there, Rich, because it has been getting not just better, but dramatically better since the Juul vaping epidemic in 2019. And if you remember back then, President Trump was being asked to ban flavored e-cigarettes. But he did something a lot smarter than that. At our urging, he decided to raise the age to buy vaping products and all tobacco products to 21. Congress passed the law then, and he signed it. And since then, the youth vaping rate in this country has dropped or plummeted 61%. And I think that what people fail to realize is that flavor bans and other bans don't work. I think people know this, but they keep advocating for them. And yet there are much better solutions. Now, according to the CDC's National Youth Tobacco Survey, the youth vaping rate now sits at the lowest level in more than a decade, even before e-cigarettes were regulated by the FDA. And today, according to that same survey, only about 4.4% of youth use e-cigarettes regularly, and only 2.5% use them daily. Okay, now this is important. That's about, that's less than 60,000 youth who apparently use them daily. That to the 13 million vapors, adult vapors, and the 30 million smokers who are smoking cigarettes and dying. This is where we have to rebalance, and that's what the experts have been saying. we have to rebalance our considerations about our policies on e-cigarettes, because it is the adults who are dying from smoking today that we need to pay attention to. And yes, there are many things that we can do to address youth vaping, but it is not a youth vaping epidemic. In fact, the FDA stopped calling it that about a year ago. So we, as an association, advocate for smart, common sense marketing reforms, access limitations to keep driving this youth vaping rate down. But the kinds of things that politicians like to talk about is simply, oh, let's ban these products. Let's ban flavors. Well, here's the funny part. That same National Youth Tobacco Vaping Survey of all youth in this country, the kids say that flavors are not the reason that they vape, and not even the reason that they started vaping. Yet that's just a common trope that's trotted out all the time to make it appear as if flavors are what's attracting kids. So if we don't get serious and address the real issues, then we're not going to really be able to address and continue to suppress youth vaping. But it's in a much better place than it was 4 years ago, and that's because we did smarter policies than simply trying to ban flavors.
Now, Tony, I want to ask you about China. I'm no fan of China, and I know that most plastic items in America are made in China. A lot of people import many goods from China, and China's no friend of the United States. So there's a lot to discuss and to look at. What's your take on the role of China in vaping?
Well, it's not unlike their role in other big industries like the pharmaceutical industry, the med industry, the tech industry. I mean, lots and lots and lots of products are made in China. Your iPhones, your computers, your APIs. And what people, I think, get confused about when it comes to this issue as it relates to vaping. Sure, the products are all manufactured in China. In fact, that's where they were invented. But the reality is that we have a huge United States vaping industry that sells products that just happen to be made there. And our industry here generates $17.6 billion in total economic impact for the U.S. economy. We employ over 90,000 people in this industry, pay them over $5.4 billion in wages, and generate nearly $6 billion in state and local taxes. And that's what my association is very interested in protecting. The U.S. small business owners, the mom and pop retailers that built businesses, and in large part they built them not to sell a Chinese product. They built them because they too smoked cigarettes for decades and could not quit. And when they found that vaping products worked, they said, I've got to share this. I've got to start a business to help sell this. And so from the ground up in this country, from the shop Main Street up, we have built an industry that stands separate and apart from the traditional tobacco industry that generates economics for our country. The problem we have, though, with the regulation is that the FDA itself, in the way that they have misused this regulation, is they are not only stymieing innovation in technologies, they're also killing any incentive for a U.S. company to set up operations here and to manufacture products here. And the reason for that is there is just no clear path through this regulation to start a product and to get it through and approved to be on the market. We talked about the numbers at the beginning of the show. You know, a handful of vaping products out of 26 million applications have been authorized by this FDA. That's an absurdly low number. So why would any U.S. company invest the money and the capital to build a manufacturing facility here when they know that this FDA has no intention of following the law and actually getting these products authorized and into the marketplace?
Interesting stuff. Folks, we're on with Tony Abboud. And Tony, let everybody know how they can learn more about the work that you're doing at Vapor Tech Association.
Well, we obviously are on social media, like on LinkedIn, on Twitter, and on Facebook. You can go to our website at vaportechnology.org. I think that, and what we try to do there is we try to put out a lot of helpful information about what's going on in the industry, what's gone wrong with our government in the way that it is handling this issue, which is a critical public health issue, where, as I was saying before, leading tobacco control scientists have made it clear that our government has to change its posture here. And right now we're stuck, frankly, because we try to elucidate those issues on our website, but we have a number of different reports, such as a report on the FDA being on fire and authorizing new as opposed to less harmful vaping products. We share a lot of information about the science that's out there, because, again, when the 15 past presidents of the Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco say that our country is going in the wrong direction, when they say that the youth vaping issue is not as big of a problem as people are making it out to be, when they say that not as many kids are actually getting addicted and the statistics bear it out as people like to talk about, these are all things that are not often reported on by the mainstream media. They like.
All right, Tony Abboud, I appreciate it. I got to hit a break right here. Check them out at vaportechnology.org. Folks, we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, Americanos, amigos, everybody listening, thank you for joining us tonight. 833-482-5337. I want to go to Lansing, Michigan, and check in with Ken calling us from WILS, right in the middle of the Midwest. Ken, go right ahead.
Hey, good evening, Rich. Always a great show, my friend.
Thank you.
I was watching the debate there, and one of the funniest lines in the whole damn thing is when Trump looked at him and says, "I'm not," and before he even said anything, the look he gave him was priceless.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I know what he said, and I don't even think he knows what he said.
That might have been one of the funniest. You're right.
That was great, but I think Joe Biden is such a miserable human being for what she's doing to him, to allow him to make an ass out of himself like he is. And when she walked after the debate, she come up on stage and she grabbed his little hand and walked him down them 3 steps and walked him backwards to a room somewhere where there were some Biden people. And her and him are up on stage, and she's looking at him, and she's addressing him like a 3rd grader. "Oh, Joe, you answered all the questions. Good for you." And he's looking at her like he doesn't even know her.
Oh, man, you're spot on. And that's so, I've seen that clip. It is funny. It's sad and funny at the same time. And you're right. He seemed as if, like, what are you talking about? What's going on? It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to watch. Folks, thank you, Ken, by the way. Folks, we're going to get to all of your calls right now. I see that calls are lining up. Make sure you get them in now. Get them in early. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. We're going to get into everything we talked about tonight, plus all of your reactions and opinions. We're live. We're national, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you. 833-4-VALDEZ. Coming up now, Open Phone America.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, and Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the third hour of the program, our Tuesday night edition of the show. Phone number is 833-482-5337 if you want to join us, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to get into a bunch of stuff. We've talked about vaping, in particular, how it affects the youth. We've talked about the Supreme Court decision. We've talked about the punting from the Supreme Court on the Second Amendment. We've talked about Joe Biden and his horrific debate performance. In fact, you've got some pundits, I'm not sure what number on my list this is, that are actually calling for Biden to get out of the race. Listen to this.
The first Democratic lawmaker is publicly calling for President Biden to drop out of the presidential race. Congressman Lloyd Doggett of Texas said Biden's debate performance failed to effectively defend the administration's many accomplishments. In a statement, he also said, quote, unlike Trump, President Biden's first commitment has always been to our country, not himself. I am hopeful that he will make the painful and difficult decision to withdraw.
That is CBS News anchor Lindsay Reiser reading a statement from Congressman Lloyd Doggett, a Democrat from Texas, the first Democrat in Congress to call for Biden to withdraw from the 2024 presidential race. And I don't know if that's going to be a long line of Democrats, but I can tell you that it should be a long line of Democrats because Biden isn't helping them. And these are people that want to win their race. And they know if I'm down ticket from Joe Biden, do I have a shot at winning? Obviously, the answer is it's going to be a lot easier to lose if people are like, look, I'm not showing up for Biden. I'm just staying home. Right? Lots of Democrats are going to take the L there. So it's tough to see how this is really going to help people down ticket. Biden needs to find some allies in some of these down ballot races and really get those people to become rock stars or those that already are rock stars to help bring him up in the ticket, because being at the top of the ticket and having nobody like you, and again, I'm not saying that nobody likes Biden, but to have a lot of your base kind of abandon ship is not very helpful. So anyway, we're going to go to your calls on this stuff. We got a lot of people on hold tonight and more coming in. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. Let us go to, let's see, where do we go? Let's see who's on hold first. All right, I think we're going to go right here to Joe, Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, WOND. Joe, go right ahead.
Hey,
Joe, can you hear me? If
how
you
are
can,
you
blink
doing?
your eye. Wonderful, thank you. Go right ahead. Talk.
Yeah, I heard you talking about the e-cigarettes, and you had a guest on saying that there was a low percentage of teenagers since 2019.
Yeah, your thoughts on that?
I disagree. I'm in my 20s, and I see a lot of younger kids taking up vaping. And if they're not doing vaping, they're doing the nicotine pouches, Zyn or On, or, you know.
Yeah, well, the case he was making was that it's down from 2019 when there was a huge Juul pod epidemic.
Yeah, I don't think the Juul company has anything to do with it. I think now that Juul is gone, there's other companies from China that are making like disposable vapes, it's called now, and more kids are doing that instead of the pods from the Juuls.
Do you think they're easier to get today than they were a long time ago?
Oh, for sure. I've been getting them since I was underage, I'll tell you that.
How do you do it? Is it you just have a spot that is willing to sell them to you, like a convenience store or a smoke shop, or is it something you like order online? How does it work?
It's more local shops and convenience stores. I would say it's more in person than online.
Okay, no, that's good to know, because I have no idea what's going on there, and you're from that generation, so it's great for you to be able to weigh in on this. And honestly, having him on there, it would have been great if you were able to call while we had him on. That would have been a good juxtaposition to what he was talking about. I tend to believe that the numbers are probably down from 2019 because I haven't seen any news reports about young people getting these catastrophic lung illnesses like we saw in 2019 when that was actually happening and they went after Juul. Now, I'm not saying that Juul was primarily responsible for this stuff, but I am saying that they were targeted, and I saw what happened, probably from a competitor of theirs or from Big Tobacco. And if you see the documentary I'm talking about, it's a very interesting one. So I would tend to believe that the numbers are down, but I'm not. I don't have a dog in this fight, right? So I think your word is as good as anybody else's when you say that it's still going on and it's very easy for you to get. What would make it difficult for you to get?
Or as an adult, I was never promoted. There was never advertisements I've seen for Juuls. It was just everyone had either a Juul or a disposable vape. Like, I don't get that.
You don't get why people do it?
I don't get why everyone's blaming Juul. It's not Juul. It's more the Chinese companies that are making.
No, I don't think they're blaming Juul. I think they're just saying that this became very popular when Juul was the industry leader, and now Juul is gone because of lawsuits and whatever the case was, and the numbers are down from. Again, I'm not making the case either way, but I don't think anybody was blaming Juul. I think the case, at least the guest that we had, he was blaming. It seemed that he was blaming Big Tobacco for almost everything that went on, and saying that if we don't have vaping, people aren't able to stop smoking cigarettes. And again, I wasn't necessarily looking to argue with the guy because I just wanted to hear what he had to say about it. But I could see how one could argue that for sure, to make the case that if we had one less way of getting people nicotine, then that's one less way for people to be addicted to nicotine. Whereas you could also make the argument saying, but it's also another way to help people stop and taper off. The problem is, from what I see and from the people I know, and you tell me what you think, I know people who've smoked cigarettes for 30 years and they're able to stop for a considerable amount of time, sometimes forever. I've known people that have been vaping for, 6 months or a year, and they're telling me that they're more addicted to that than they've ever been to anything else. What say you?
Yes. Yeah.
You think that's true?
I agree, yes.
Well, Joe, I appreciate your thoughts. Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, WOND. Great station, by the way. Thanks for the call. Keep the calls coming. I appreciate hearing from people in their 20s all the time. Talk radio is not just a game for people that are of age, but it's, I think, for anybody who wants some good conversation and wants to hear what's going on out there. So, Joe, thanks again. Godspeed to you, brother. We're going to continue. We'll take a pause right here. We'll come right back. We got calls from Arkansas, New York, Delaware, Montana, Vermont, Idaho. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air. It's Rich Valdez.
People are talking about bedwetters. I'm sitting here wearing Pampers, Huggies, and Depends, okay? Call me a bedwetter. I'm scared. I'm worried. I'm nervous, and a lot of people are. And you get people who come out, and everybody has the party line. But behind closed doors, what people are worrying about is, what are the polls going to show in the battleground states a week from now? You've seen some rallying to Joe Biden. You've seen some people, just like when Trump got in trouble, they rallied to him. People are rallying to Joe Biden. You're seeing some fundraising numbers going up. You're seeing some positive things, but we don't know what that's going to look like.
That's Van Jones saying he's scared. Van Jones is scared. I don't know if Democrats are going to get rid of Biden or not. I would bet my bottom dollar, and I don't have a lot of dollars, so I'm not betting a lot, but I would bet my bottom dollar that absolutely nothing happens. They're just going to continue. Maybe there's a challenge from the floor with superdelegates and whatnot, but none of them, in my opinion, have a shot at winning maybe Michelle Obama. And I don't think they're that desperate to win. Again, it's politics. And I believe that oftentimes in politics, people will, if you know you're going to lose, why not just negotiate the terms of your loss? Say, hey, look, I know you want this. I can give you this if you give me a little power here. I mean, that's how horse trading works. It's not the first time the Democrats have had to lose an election. It's not the end of the world. I'm not going to pull all the stops. They're going to do everything they can. That's it. If they don't win, they don't win. Now it's time to say, all right, what do you want? You want border? I'll give you border. How about we support you wholeheartedly on border? No problems on shutting down the border in Congress. But we need this. We need you to keep feeding us our Ukraine money or whatever. And they're going to start cutting deals with Trump, with, I was going to say McCarthy, but with Speaker Johnson. That's all. That seems to be the best approach. Right? These people know they're going to lose a lot of seats if this continues. So right now it's all about damage control. Because remember, this term that people use, the uniparty, really is what we used to call bipartisanship or collegiality. Right? People these are colleagues. They work together. They're friends. They go out to the same bar afterwards. They play for different teams, but they go to the same bar afterwards. They're not enemies. They don't hate their fellow American. They're all trying to live. That's how Washington works. So I just don't see why that would, change now just because the electorate is polarized. Okay, so you have MTG going at Jasmine Crockett over, one's physical appearance and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the rest of them aren't like that. So I don't think that's going to be the case. But I want to go to your calls. Let's go to Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Doc, go right ahead.
2 points, Rick. So I missed the Supreme Court decision. How did the court punt in the Second Amendment, in your opinion? I missed that decision entirely. I was out of it for a while.
Well, it was a bunch of things. The domestic violence, they said that we'll leave it to the states.
Yes. Which is not good because that law was bad law. As I said to you before on a previous call, that was bad law out of the Clinton administration. In Delaware, it's domestic violence. If I shove you as my wife or my spouse or my girlfriend, I can merely shove you, and that will not hurt you, not hit you with a weapon. I can merely shove you, and that's called offensive touching under Delaware law, Rich. And that means I'll never have a gun for the rest of my life.
Yeah, listen, I think that's the whole crazy thing. I don't want somebody that's a wife beater to be able to further cause, add insult to injury, right? But I also don't want people, irrespective of what's going on, to lose certain rights. And you have to weigh these things. And I think that they try to sway the public, Doc, by using the most egregious scenario, like they are with Trump, just to make an example, saying, oh, so now that he's got immunity as president, he's going to assassinate his political opponents. Who said? Right? When has Trump ever done that? We all have the benefit in this country of looking at a Trump presidency, 4 years where he served as commander-in-chief, and we know he's never done that. So why he would start now, I don't know. And why we have to make every last person that is involved in domestic violence the same person. I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying the shove is good and not. I'm just saying we really have to just respect the integrity of the Constitution and look at these things as they arise. There should be laws on these already. I don't think we need to I don't know, further expand these things. Go right ahead.
Rich, one other point and I'll let you go. Rich, in your opinion, what's going to happen in this scenario where President Biden may or may not step down? Will he step down? Will he not step down?
I think he stays
now
there.
It looks like Jonathan Karl of ABC News made a prescient comment, Rich. I want you to comment on his comment. He said that if Biden stays in there, Democratic insiders are telling him, Jonathan Karl, this could be a blowout like Reagan did in 1980. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I hope it is. I really hope it is. I hope he stays in there. And like I said, I think they realize this is going to be a big deal. And Harry Enton from CNN, he played an audio clip of that. Matter of fact, there's even a third clip from Steve Kornacki. Doc, don't hang on. I want you to hear this. This one is Steve Kornacki on NBC News talking about the polls. Listen to this.
This isn't just his political opponents saying he should get out of the race. This is worry within his own party, concern within his own party. 45% of Democrats saying that Biden should step aside. And obviously that performance, I think, just reinforcing and maybe even increasing in terms of its potency, the main concern or one of the main concerns we've seen over and over when it comes to Biden, and that is his age. This is a Gallup poll just before the debate, and already going into the debate, 67% of voters said they considered Biden too old to be president. That's 30 points higher than the number for Donald Trump. And just take a look at the other oldest nominees in history. John McCain in 2008, Dole 96, Reagan in both of his campaigns. The number was somewhere in the 30s, even the 20s for Reagan. That Biden number is a number we've never seen for any candidate before. And I will say, as we wait for definitive polling, we do have one poll that is now asked the horse race question after the debate, asking Biden versus Trump after the debate, who are you for? It's just from one state. It's from New Hampshire. But in that New Hampshire poll, this is out just a couple minutes ago, Trump leads by 2 points in the New Hampshire poll. If you can read my writing, Trump +2. And the critical thing there is in 2020, Biden carried New Hampshire by 7.5 points.
So, again, we heard it from CNN. Now we're hearing it from NBC. It seems that all of these guys that analyze data are saying we've never seen anything like this before. Biden is in a miserable position, and I don't know that he can pull it out now. But whatever happens, I think the Democrats are in damage control. It doesn't matter who they put up. I think they could say, we're going to challenge the Constitution and run Barack Obama. I don't think it makes a difference at this point. Maybe I'm wrong, Doc.
Rich, I thank you for your comments. I think you're right, buddy. I think you're right all the way down the line. I think right now it doesn't matter because I think President Biden is toast if he stays in there, and I don't think they can find anybody on the Democratic side. I want your thoughts on this, and I'll shut up and leave you to your show and your guests and your callers. I don't think they can find anybody other than President Biden who could challenge President Trump. What say you?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think that's right. I think I thank you for your compliment, and B, again, I don't see how they're able to do it other than Democrats just trying to soften the blow, to have a softer landing, so that they have some modicum of control or leverage. Because we're seeing something and we're seeing momentum change, but there's issues. There's still a summer that we've got to go here. They still can release lots of gallons of the strategic reserve. Most people don't. If you're not listening to talk radio or watching the news, you don't know about that, right? Well, you do know the gas pump price going down. They can use the power of big government to go after big food manufacturers and say, you better start charging less for your food. So that all of a sudden come September, October, and all of a sudden Biden does a nice speech and say, listen, price of gas has gone down 2 months in a row. Come on, it's not a joke. Come on, man. He can go out there and he can say, you're paying less when you go to Walmart. You're paying less when you're at Target. You're paying. And as long as he can say that and there's any degree of truth to it, that may help him. So we're in a fight and we got to stay the course. Doc, thanks for the call. Folks, coming right back. Your calls and more coming up straight ahead with me. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
That is Karine Jean-Pierre saying Joe Biden does not have dementia. It's got to be tough, right? When you're the press secretary of the White House and that's your job, right? No, my boss is mentally okay. I swear he is. I swear he doesn't have dementia. I swear he doesn't have Alzheimer's. And you better ask the other guys, make sure you're asking that about Trump. Why on earth would we ask that about Trump? The guy, he sat there and had a masterful performance in his debate. Biden had a bad one, and that's why they're asking, right? It wasn't Trump that looked in the camera and said, and forgot what he was saying. It wasn't any of those situations. It didn't happen to Trump. It's not because I'm a Trump fan. This is really just calling it like I see it, right? Trump, everybody and their mama was like, yeah, that guy did good that night. Told you I went to my Cuban buddies in the town of West New York, New Jersey. Went to a barbecue on Fillmore Place, small block in West New York, New Jersey, and hung out with a bunch of Cubans who I'd hung out with on Noche Buena, which is Christmas Eve. And back then they were like, look, I respect you, but I don't really like Trump, blah, blah, blah. Yet these were non-conservative Republican Cubans. They were like, we don't like Trump. And maybe one or two of them did, but the majority of that, they didn't. No problem. And they wanted to debate me and whatever. I was like, look, I'm here to eat the food. I'm not here to fight politics with you guys. Call the show. But I went to this barbecue, and they were all welcoming me with open arms, saying, you were right. Everything you said about the lawfare was right. And it's only because I'm observing this stuff, and I'm just sharing what I see every day. And they're busy working and trying to make a living, and they just don't see it. And now that they're seeing it, they're like, man, this is not good for America. It's not good for me, not good for my family. So I think we're seeing a lot of that. Anyway, let us continue. Where do we go from here? Let's see. Hang on. Bear with me. Live program. And I'm going to go to Andy, Auburn, New York, WAUB. Go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez.
Hey, that noise means my phone is running out of battery, but it won't run out. It's your liberal friend, Andy. I listen to a lot of right-wing radio, even though I'm a liberal.
Good for you.
And all day long, I hear these clips of Biden. Have you heard the one where he's reading the speech and he says, pause 4 more years? I mean, it's cringe-inducing.
Yeah.
And you just described, I don't think this happened during the debate, but I've heard it many times with him out in public where he starts a sentence, can't remember where it's going, and then he just says, oh, whatever. I give up on that sentence. So when I heard, and liberals that I know don't listen to right-wing radio, so they don't hear this stuff. So let's say they live in a bubble, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard the debate, and I listened to it, I didn't see him. I thought, well, he's speaking incoherent sentences. He's not rambling off. He's not mumbling. Like, I can understand the words he's saying. He's not incoherent. He's not indecipherable. And I assume that what everyone on the right was waiting for him to do, like completely melt down. And since he didn't, I thought this was a pretty good performance. But then NPR does their after debate discussion, and they're like, wow, that was really bad. And I'm like, why are you surprised? Now, if you guys are creating the bubble that everyone on the left is living in, don't tell me you are also living in the bubble you're creating. You're like,
but they are, Andy. I think that's part of the issue, is that they really are. Like Anderson Cooper, I've watched him for years. I cut clips from his show, and I can tell you that he's an anchor, not an actor. And when he interviewed Kamala Harris afterwards, he stuttered, he stammered, something he doesn't typically do. He was really incredulous about why on earth the Biden campaign asked to do this debate this soon before the GOP official nomination at the convention, before the DNC's official nomination at their convention. He was truly like stumped as to, you asked for this. Why on earth did you do this? And I think he was just like, I have to ask this question. Otherwise, the American people that are watching, that just watch this spectacle on television, are going to really just ask a lot of questions. And I think that's what it really boiled down to. So did Biden sound bad? Yeah, I think he sounded worse than he usually does, especially because we were able to see him in long form, where I think the first, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, he was speaking very fast, and his eyes were like wide open, like he had drank 2 or 3 espresso coffees. And Cuban coffees at that, and or even the Puerto Rican coffee. And while he was doing this, then he literally started to slow down, like when a little toy starts to lose battery. It's like, and it was just amazing to me that was happening on television right when we were watching it. So, yeah, I think your guys on the left, they are surprised because they're living in the bubble that they've created.
If I can, am I still on?
You're still on. Just make it quick because we have to hit a pause.
My view is, as a liberal, as an environmentalist, I'll vote for Biden. I don't care if his advisors have to operate him like a marionette. I don't care. And it's not much different than with Trump, when all these religious people were like, I don't care if he cheated on his wife with a porn star. I don't care if he did this or did that. He's gonna prevent. He's going to bring in judges that will get rid of Roe versus Wade, which is exactly what happened. And so they love it. They don't care about his deficiencies, and I don't care about Biden's deficiencies, as long as he's not going to allow the oil companies to drill in the Grand Canyon, for example. You know what I'm saying?
All right, brother. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Andy in Auburn, New York, 4 minutes and 55 seconds. I did that because he was a liberal, so forgive me, folks, for giving him that much time, but I wanted him to make the best point that he could make, and he had 5 minutes to do it. That's as much time as we give guests on the show. Anyway, Andy, thanks for the call. Next time, try to be really concise and really make it happen, Captain, but I appreciate it. Let me see. I'm going to do one more, and then we got to hit this pause. Let's go. Dave, Atlanta, Georgia, WDUN. Go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. I have a comment for you about the debt forgiveness that Biden is giving to all those students out there, to the IRS. Debt forgiveness like that is deemed income, and they owe taxes on that. I know this happened to me, not necessarily with any loan debt, but credit card debt, which I had a lot of. So I am a direct recipient of the IRS's wrath on that.
Wow. Yeah, this is you should probably call Joe Biden and see if you can get on the list for credit card relief because that's probably the next step, but it won't be, right? Because he won't come at the banks that way. Because the federal government, now that's another angle, maybe, you never know. Just imagine if the Biden administration were to say, you know what, that's how we're going to handle things. We're going to help Americans with, it's not bankruptcy, folks. We're going to do it. We're going to call it, and I don't know, maybe they'll use the Department of Labor, the way they use the Department of Education to become a bank. Maybe they'll create the Department of Labor as a new bank where they'll start buying your debt and saying, well, we need that. And that might be the new way of buying votes. I don't know. But that would be a heck of a way, right, to do it. Because I think a lot of people are interested in Trump because of the amount of money in their pocket. And if Biden could put more money in more people's pockets, maybe strengthen the price of the dollar, help my auto insurance go down, and help more Americans buy a home, I think he'd be a clear winner. I just don't know if that can happen. Dave in Atlanta, Georgia, thanks for the call. I wish you the best of luck with everything. Hope you'll call in again. WDUN in the building. We're taking a pause, coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, continue the conversation. Let's go to Abe, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Good evening.
Hey.
I wanted to talk about the Michelle Obama thing, and I kind of agree with you. And I know for many years, the Clintons used to talk about the Clinton machine and how basically their popularity was contagious throughout the nation. First of all, Obama, to many people, I think was a failed presidency to begin with. I think most analysts and even, people on the Democratic side think he's an ideologue and wasn't even really effective as a president. And furthermore, Michelle Obama literally has zero experience in government. So I kind of agree with you that that's not a realistic possibility. I'm curious why people think it is or how that even emerged. I think she's a horrendous candidate.
I'm with you. I really am. But I think there's some positives. I really do think that there would be a infusion of energy if Michelle Obama ran, because she was very popular as first lady, very popular. And Barack Obama is still popular. So I think if you have this power couple out there, crisscrossing America, doing the rallies, not as, surrogates for Joe, but saying, hey, let's put the Obamas back in the White House. That would really stimulate, I think, a lot of support with a lot of people, because they'd say this is the cure for Joe Biden. Democrats that were successful in their 8 years, in their opinion. However, so I think it's not an impossibility. I think the fact that it can happen it is what gives people hope, just like Trump running, right? We think Trump can become president, so people are enthused, and that's why they're giving money, and they're very excited about that. I think that's part of it. The other part of it where I think it won't happen is I just think they're going to make too much money. And I don't think they would want to be hamstrung by the ethics rules that go with how much money you make while you're in the White House, the way Trump was, right? Trump was hamstrung by that. He had to have all these trusts and get rid of all of his, divest his ownership interests and ultimately lose, I don't know what it was, $1 billion or close to $1 billion, if not more, by conservative estimates of his net worth while he was in the White House. So he's probably the only person to be worth less money when he left the White House than when he went in. And I think by that standard, the Obamas think to themselves, this is dangerous. I also think that their kids were young at the time that they were in the White House. Their kids are a little older now, maybe old enough to get married in the next couple of years and have children and grandchildren. Is that something that they want to do in the White House? Probably not. So where are their kids going to live? Where are they going to be? Will they be able to have access to any future relationships, marriages for their children, potential stuff, even grandkids? Will they miss that if Michelle is president for the next 4, maybe 8 years? So I think there's just a lot for them to consider. And again, for me, I think it's just financial. It just makes too much sense for them to be out here making deals with Netflix and writing books and doing whatever they want, because they're making money hand over fist. And who wouldn't want to do that? And I think that's what it boils down to. Abe in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, WRNN. Big shout out to you guys. We get to the rest of your calls and more right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our conversation. Let's go to Schwenksville, Pennsylvania, WXDE. Check in with Sue. Sue, it's the speed round. Go right ahead.
Well, my comments have to do with the Michelle Obama candidacy. Let's face facts. There isn't anybody that would fool themselves into thinking that if they elected her, that she would be really running things. It would be ostensibly a shadow presidency with Barack Obama in charge, which I think he has been pulling the strings on the Biden administration. And wouldn't we have a constitutional crisis, because that would be a third and potentially a fourth term for Barack Obama?
Yeah. Listen, but again, you're right. But as long as he's figured out how to skirt the system and get enough people to allow him to call those shots, and I think ultimately you'll never be able to prove it, because it would just be like, hey, yeah, that was my president when I was VP. He was my mentor. He's given me advice as a former president. We love him. And it would go on. She'd say, well, that's my husband. He was, my favorite president. I was his first lady. And, he's still advising me. And honestly, we don't know how much advising she did of him. How much influence she had over him when he was president. So who knows? Maybe she is the brains behind it all. I don't know. I don't know who's really wearing the pants in this family. But I do know that I think they just stand too much to lose being in the White House. Maybe that's very naive of me. Maybe they actually stand to have the biggest military contracts and kickbacks on the biggest deals and getting a percentage of all that Ukraine funding. And maybe this is exactly how they make money. But if that were the case, I think that what we have to do is look at why didn't she run to begin with? She didn't want to run. Why'd she put out a statement saying, I'm not running? Why would she wait till there's 4 months left to say, I'm going to throw in the life preserver and try and save this guy? I just don't think that she's that type of plan B type of person. I think when Michelle Obama runs for president, it's an actual coronation. And she wants the red carpet rolled out for her. And I just don't think she's going to do it. That's my opinion. Sue, thank you for your really astute commentary. Always appreciate it. Shout out to WXDE. Let us continue. Diane, Chicago, Illinois, WGN. It's the speed round, so we don't have a lot of time, but go for it.
Okay, well, instead of talking about the immunity ruling, I'll talk about Michelle Obama. As long as you're talking about this, I would think if anybody, it could be, if they select somebody else, it would be Hillary, which is sort of the same age group as Trump, and who knows. But one thing, it's 4th of July. Think of what Michelle Obama said about the flag. Remember that? Loud and clear. I mean, you can see it on the internet, which she said, all this for a damn flag. When they were doing the ceremony, she was a young Michelle, where they had just won in 2009 at a ceremony, where the veterans hold up the flag. And she is telling her hubby, all this for a damn flag. That's our flag. That's her flag. Now, that tells you what she is she wasn't that young of a woman. She was a grown woman at that time, and that's what she thought of basically America and American system.
I think you're right, Diane. Horrible comments. You're right. She seemed very uncomfortable in that role always. This is the first time my husband, I'm proud to be an American. I think when he first got elected, the comment you mentioned about the flag, and there were many incidents of that. I think ultimately Michelle Obama did not enjoy her role as first lady, and maybe she enjoyed it, but it was like, I did it, been there, done that. We're good. 8 years of our life, not doing it again. Now we're making hundreds of millions of dollars, and I love this. And I can't blame her. I'd like to make hundreds of millions of dollars as well. Diane, thanks for the call. Always appreciate hearing from you as well. Let me see. Where do we go from here? Let us go. Paul, Zanesville, Ohio. Go right ahead, brother. Speed round.
Hey, yep. I was watching the TV on your break, and they was making French toast, and it kind of made me hungry. But anyway, I don't Michelle Obama and all that. I don't know what's going to happen there. But Karine Jean-Pierre, I wouldn't want a job, right now, with the way Biden's doing. I can say that. But, yeah, now let me ask you something, Rich. Presidential immunity, don't you think that'll work for Joe Biden, too? It goes out and, all the allegations that have been alleged at him and everything.
100%. 100%. Anything that he can claim and make the case that this was done in my official capacity, he's going to be off the hook. That's why I think they all have to be hands off here and say, you know what, enough is enough. Ya basta. We're not going there. Frank in Evergreen, Ralph in Burlington, Joe in Salem, thank you all. I appreciate your calls. Shout out to all of you guys. Folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless. I am Rich Valdez.